Next from Springfield, we talked to the new director of the Illinois Municipal League, Brad Cole. Mr. Cole, the former mayor of Carbondale, discusses why he took the position, the importance of a solid infrastructure in attracting new businesses to Illinois, and some of the major issues affecting Illinois municipalities, such as pension funding. This runs about 30 minutes.
Brad Cole, thanks for joining us again on the Illinois Channel.
Good morning.
Some of the last times we spoke, I don't exactly remember when that was on camera that we spoke, but you may have been a candidate for lieutenant governor.
Yes.
And that would have been roughly 4.5 years ago or so. Right. To remind people, you were formerly the mayor of Carbondale, and after that you worked on the staff of Senator Mark Kirk for a while. Right. But now we find you as the brand new executive director of the Illinois Municipal League. How did that come about? And tell us a little bit how your experiences both as a mayor and also working on the staff of Senator Kirk prepares you for this new position.
Well, this is a great opportunity here with the Municipal League. You know, we, as an association for the cities and towns and villages in Illinois, I think there's a lot that we can do to educate our members, the communities that we serve, advocate for the people that they serve, which are the residents of Illinois, and really empower municipalities to do the things that they're trying to do, usually behind the scenes for people. You know, most city governments are doing things all day long that nobody thinks about. You get on the news for a fire or a police issue, but every day, all day long, the toilets flush, the water comes out of the faucet, hopefully the streets are in good repair, and services for planning and development are ongoing. So this is a great opportunity for me to kind of include all the different backgrounds that I have, some of which you mentioned. For 8 years I served as mayor of Carbondale, which is a good-sized downstate community. Gave me an interesting perspective, I think, on this job because I sat in the mayor's seat. And the Municipal League is governed by a board of volunteer members, the mayors of 3 or 4 dozen different communities all around. So having been in that position, knowing what it takes to run a city, and then after that I did run for statewide office in 2009, 2010 for lieutenant governor, gave me a good sense for the rest of Illinois. And been in all 102 counties and met with mayors and county board members and local elected officials, township officers, whoever it may be. And got to see really how Illinois has a lot of similarities between its regions, but then also has obvious differences. But at the end of the day, everybody's trying to do something good for their community or for their region, their area, and then that's good for Illinois. And then obviously pulling all that together and going to work for U.S. Senator Mark Kirk as his downstate director, which was everything outside the Chicago area, 95 counties out of the 102. Gave me a good chance to pull all of that together. And so I think the background that I have is lending towards this job, lending towards me being able to have a good understanding of what cities deal with and what a local elected official deals with every day, but also what the General Assembly does and how our federal congressional delegation represents the cities and villages and towns. So it's been a good run for me with a lot of different experiences at the local, state, and federal level, and now I'm going to try to put that to use for the Municipal League, and I'm excited about it. This is a great organization.
And before people say, you know, what does he know about it, creating jobs or anything, he's always been a government worker. You were just before this working in a private company. Right.
I served as Senior Vice President of Pepsi Mid-America, which is a 5-state regional Pepsi distributorship, bottling company distributorship, about 1,000 employees, and handling you know, a lot of different things from the bottom up in a business that includes consumers, vendors, employees, corporate types, and just your everyday average citizen who wants to buy a Pepsi Cola. So I do have that private sector experience too, which is good. You know, we say a lot of times in politics it's good to sign the front of the check, not just the back of the check. And that gives me a sense of the private sector too that folks are dealing with. So I hope I have a good understanding. I think I do. Bring some various experiences and background together to this position.
You know, I think a lot of people, they just don't know some of the fundamentals, and maybe that's the fault of the news media. Maybe we cover issues, you say we cover a fire in a city. They don't know what cities really focus on, what they do, and as you mentioned, I mean, one is going to be fire and police, and the other is going to be infrastructure so that they keep the water clean and the toilets flushing and the streets paved.
Right.
When you look at different communities, now some are going to have issues that are only particular to their community. Mm-hmm. You're heading, as a municipal league head, a statewide organization. Are there issues relative to municipal government that are statewide that are of massive concern? And I don't know if this is true, but are pensions, as an example, that are such a concern at the state
Yes.
level? Are they a concern at the city level?
Absolutely. In fact, when I was mayor, one of the last major pension reforms that went through the General Assembly about 7 or 8 years ago, I worked on, and that is still a problem today, because you see the biggest issue facing local governments, if I can say there is one, and I like to say there's about 10 or 15 issues all tied for first place as far as the most important, but unfunded mandates coming down from the General Assembly to municipalities. And one of those has to do with pensions, because the General Assembly over time has introduced and adopted pension sweeteners for labor, maybe that's police or fire, and the municipality is then stuck with the burden of paying for that. And so when you see now a public safety pensioner who at their death their spouse receives full benefit for the remainder of their life, well, that's a sweetener that's been approved over some period of time by the General Assembly that the municipality was not a part of. And so when the local fire union is negotiating with City Hall on their contract for the next 3 or 4 years, they're dealing with pay, and they're dealing with some local benefits or restrictions or requirements. But then the General Assembly is out here on the fringe enacting law that impacts those too. It's almost, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's an unfair labor practice, but you almost have a third party that's in the labor negotiation at City Hall that doesn't report to City Hall. And so those decisions drastically impact cities. And that is an issue where there's statewide concern. Obviously, the pension obligations in Illinois are a major topic with the state, because they've got bills that are out there and unfunded liabilities. Doesn't necessarily mean that they can't pay the pensioners today or tomorrow, but at some point, if everybody calls in and the check is due, that's when those unfunded liabilities become a problem. And so these things are on the minds of municipalities as well. Now also, obviously, infrastructure improvements. Some cities can do road projects or bridge projects or sidewalks or utility repairs, but when you look at a major capital campaign for the state, that's an investment in the local communities. And that's something that's of statewide concern. So when you see thousands of bridges that need repair, you know, the township...
So let me just interject. So you would lobby for an additional capital bill? Or?
Absolutely. Because the local unit of government, whether it's a township or the city or the county, doesn't necessarily have those resources to be able to improve the roadways or the bridges or the water infrastructure.
I'll say, when you ran for lieutenant governor, you ran for as a Republican. Now in this position, it's nonpartisan, and
right.
and frankly, a lot of the governance, I would say, at the local level is largely nonpartisan. Even if they
yes.
even if they have differences, it's the differences don't split along party lines, so to speak. Right. A capital bill, and a lot of people don't know that phraseology necessarily, but it basically means this, the government, in this case, if we had a statewide capital bill, we'd be going out and borrowing money on the bond market mm-hmm. to raise some billions of dollars that the state would then dole out to put a new bridge in this community or that community. Mm-hmm. to speak somewhat out of turn, I've often said, if we're going to build anything in the state of Illinois, now's the time to build it, for the same reason that homeowners want to buy a home right now if you're looking, because the interest rates are at historic lows.
Right.
And we can lock in whatever the term of the bond is, a 20-year note, just like a 30-year mortgage, that would be at a very low interest rate and be far more costly to borrow that money and build our infrastructure today than it might be 5 or 10 years from now.
Right.
On that, and I know you haven't even had a chance to kind of basically, you know, talk to the lawmakers because you're just so newly in the position, but do you have any inkling that that's an argument that resonates with, let's say, the members of the General Assembly and to that, and have you had any opportunity to talk to Governor-elect Rauner?
We haven't spoken to the incoming administration yet, but I do think there is a desire to do a capital bill, whether it's bonded or pay-as-you-go. But, you know, we haven't had a major capital bill since Illinois First, which was in
George
Ryan's turn. So that was in 2000. So it's been 14, 15 years. And then, of course, Build Illinois was 15 or 20 years prior to that, in Governor Thompson's time. So we're going to be supportive of that type of statewide initiative to put resources out there. You do have to make an investment in the state, in the communities, to see some of the return. And I don't think any of us want to see more indebtedness or more bond debt out there, and we don't want to see the state not be able to pay its bills. But we are at a point where we have infrastructure needs, and the local municipality only has so many places to go, it's property tax or sales tax, to be able to pay for those things. And when I was mayor, we did infrastructure improvements. We paved the roads, we built sidewalks, we put in infrastructure that would help, you know, with mainly transportation. But whether it's roads or bridges or rail, there's a bigger picture to look at, and that's what the state's job really is. And so cities and towns and villages need that support. That's a big issue, and we're going to be encouraging that. And it's also something that will help spur the economy with jobs. You know, it will be money that's circulating out into the market by the people that are spending it, and so there are a couple of benefits to it.
You know, I was going to say, Governor Rauner is saying the way to grow revenues for the state, if I can paraphrase his comments, would be not to raise taxes, but to grow the economy.
Right.
To that, and attract more businesses, have those jobs and those businesses paying taxes. Going back to your job immediately before this, where you were working in the private sector, I don't know to what extent you ever looked to have a new business location, but you were moving your products on trucks as bottlers. You had to go. Right. How important is it from attracting new businesses to Illinois to have good infrastructure, good roads, and all that, as far as saying, come to our community or come to our state because we have great infrastructure? Well,
it's critical. And we operated in 5 states with 13 different facilities. While I was there, we're building new facilities. And in Missouri, we had built one in Illinois recently. We'd acquired others in Illinois. But the biggest issue that was an impediment to private business, from my perspective at that time, was the regulations. And you looked at the changes that were made, I'd say about 10 years ago, in some of the trucking fees and licensing fees. You know, if you're anywhere in Illinois along a border and the trucking fees double and you're 10 miles away from Iowa or Indiana or Missouri or Kentucky, it doesn't take too long to do the math and figure out maybe I should just relocate across the way. And so that's an issue that I think private businesses has a valid point in raising, is it's not just the good roads that you have to drive on, but it's the regulation and the taxes. Now, Illinois has things like TIF districts and enterprise zones where you can address taxes to try to create incentives for business to grow or expand, and there's job credit taxes and training. But you know, all of that collectively needs to be looked at, and we're going to encourage Mr. Rauner to do that, and I'm sure he will, coming from a business background. He sees that. You can't just tax more, because I think we're already overtaxed. in comparison with what we're competing against around us. So you look at the states around us, we do have high tax burdens. And municipalities don't want to increase utility tax or property tax or sales tax, and not all of them can because they may or may not have home rule authority. But there's only so many places they can go to pay for those critical needs, which are public safety, items for the general welfare of their residents. And so the state really does need to grow its base, generate more income, more jobs, more money coming into Illinois, and that'll help municipalities so that they can either ease or maintain or reduce their property tax burdens or sales tax burdens and still be able to provide all the things that people need.
When you were the mayor of Carbondale, I believe you were also instrumental in helping Southern Illinois University build a new football stadium, weren't
Right,
you?
yes.
And people might think, well, what does a football stadium at a college have to do with municipal government?
Right.
And the reason I bring that up is sometimes when you're in one position, you really have to interact. It's really tied to something that may not, on paper, be any part of your responsibility.
Right.
But obviously Southern Illinois University is headquartered in Carbondale and is probably responsible for a large percent of the local economy. I don't know what it would be.
Right.
But I guess the point I would make, do you see, having that knowledge and your experience there, do you look across and bring that viewpoint to say, if we're going to help our cities, we have to work with some of these other stakeholders because those stakeholders are critical to the economic viability and future of those communities?
Absolutely, and that's what we did when I was mayor. The university was in the middle of a major capital expansion. They were building a new football stadium, renovating their arena, building new student service offices, creating, I think, a more user-friendly environment for the students on campus. And so what I did was we approached them and said, well, can we be a part of this? Because when the university does well, we're going to do well. That's our biggest employer. That's what's bringing thousands of people into town. That's what's generating sales tax. And so we invested $20 million out of an $80 million project into that. Now, was it just building a stadium or just renovating the arena or just building student offices or just putting in sidewalks and green space? No. It was creating a better attraction, improving the infrastructure, and investing in public land for the next 100 years. They're going to bring thousands of people into town. And that's the kind of investment that municipalities need to think a little bit about. And sometimes they get criticized about when they try to help a private business. If they were to do that for say, a new employing business to come into town, well, it's going to create 1,000 jobs or 500 jobs. The long-term benefit is good for the city. It's not just we're going to build a road or put in a parking lot or run water and sewer lines. And so what we did was to create some excitement that generated 20,000 people coming into town every other Saturday, or 10,000 people coming in for a basketball game 20 times a year. So that's the type of thing that you have to really look at, in my opinion. And cities can do that, but they have to be creative, and they have to have the ability and the resources to make those tough decisions.
You had mentioned earlier, and we've talked about some of them, that you had something like 10 or 11 #1 issues. Yeah. Without going into detail, obviously we can't in all of them, but just to enumerate some of them, what are some of the other major issues?
Well, cities have been a fairly easy target for a place to go find money from the General Assembly. And we do receive a share of income tax. We need to sustain that. We need to get that collected sooner. I think...
What is the term for that fund?
It's LGDF, Local Government Distributive Fund.
And I believe that if I recall some of the details of that issue, which has come up in the past, it was decided that instead of all the cities having their own collection, it was more efficient to have the state collect it for you
and
then distribute it.
Right.
But then the state was acting as if it was their money and not
Right.
giving the communities their money due.
Exactly.
Because they were using it all of a sudden as a piggy bank to pay some of their bills. Is that more or less?
That's right on. And so, maintaining the security of LGDF is important, and maintaining the percentage, making sure that it's not a place that gets dipped into. Unfunded mandates, fighting that so that we don't have cities and towns and villages that are having more and more regulation from the state or more things that they don't control. We believe in local control. The city hall is the closest to the people, really, and so we think the mayor ought to have the opportunity to make more of those decisions locally. Unfunded mandates, in particular, when the General Assembly passes legislation that affects the cities, it could be something that costs the city a great deal of money without anybody realizing it. Now, when the state passes a bill and it impacts the state coffers, there's some study done that says it's going to cost so much. But for instance, minimum manning requirements in police or fire. So now the General Assembly has said, well, an arbitrator can decide, or this is an issue that an outside entity can decide. It's no longer the mayor or the fire chief or the police chief that decides how many people need to be on a shift. It's an outside arbitrator as a part of pension, or not necessarily pension, but contract negotiations that can make that decision. And for a city like Springfield or a city like Oak Park, it could be in the millions of dollars, because when an outsider, an arbitrator or someone outside of the real process says, well, you really need to have one more person. Okay, well, that's maybe one more person times however many shifts, times however many firehouses, all year round, not just salary, benefits, etc. Well, you could get into the millions of dollars. And so when we say unfunded mandates, we could be talking about a regulation that requires additional, some rulemaking or something that an employee has to do, or some policy that has to be implemented. But we might also be talking about real costs because of people, dollars that have to be spent. And so that's a big piece of it. So you have infrastructure needs, a capital bill, we'd like to see something happen there. Unfunded mandates, the protection of local government distributive fund, that tax share that goes back to cities. But also allowing cities to have more options and making it easier for a community to decide that they want to be home rule. Home rule allows a community to have more flexibility.
And let's define what does home rule mean?
Well, by law, it's any city over 25,000 population can automatically become a home rule community, otherwise by referendum. And that allows that city, the council, to be able to pass tax increases, a sales tax increase, or be able to enact new policies that are not otherwise saved for the state. So it creates a little bit more sovereignty for that city so that they can act more on their own for their residents. So if it's not specifically reserved for the state, then that city can enact policies, ordinances to be able to serve their local residents. Well, right now, you can't have that on a referendum any more often than every 2 years. Well, maybe it's something that if a city really wants to become home rule, maybe they try it and the residents say no because they don't have enough information. Well, wouldn't it be nice to go back next year and allow that to be back on the ballot?
Or let's say if their water tower collapses for some structural reason and they need to spend $20 million and they don't have it,
yeah,
you might need the water.
Exactly. And so those are, those kind of policies that restrict local decision-making authority. Why can't we have it on a referendum more than every 2 years? But what are the issues out there that cities and towns really need to work on? Well, they know what they are, and we just want to let them be able to make those decisions. We want mayors, village presidents, and board of trustee presidents to be able to make some of those decisions on their own. So you have those issues. Obviously, growth and economic development is a big tool for a city, but the state can come in and bolster that either through the State Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, or through programs that they are pass-throughs from the USDA or federal agencies. And so, the Economic Development Administration at the federal level. There are a lot of issues that pass through the state, and that's a big priority for municipalities because grants and programs come through. So those are some of the things that are all tied for first as far as items that we want to see benefit municipalities that route through the state capitol building.
I could talk to you probably for several hours when you get into the nitty-gritty of this, and I'm geeky enough to want to do that. But let's just touch before we wrap up on one. You, as you said, you worked as an aide on the staff of Senator Mark Kirk after you were the mayor for a period of time, and so there you working at the federal level. To what extent are federal dollars or federal grants that would be, you would work with either your congressman, I guess, the Senate staff, are those critical to communities, or are they really tangential and just on the margins?
They're critical for some communities, particularly smaller ones, and particularly in areas of water and sewer and infrastructure. So you'll see grants that will build a new water tower for a community that it's maybe only 1,000 people. You'll see grants come through USDA or EDA that will repair water and sewer lines. Those are critical dollars for small towns. They won't necessarily be that big or impactful in a larger metropolitan area, but those are major dollars for small towns. And you know, we have 1,300 communities in Illinois, so most of them are small. Anything under 5,000 or 10,000 residents, they're going to benefit greatly from some of those pass-throughs at the federal level that come through. You work with your congressman, you work with your U.S. senator, and a lot of them are based on need and what you can put into it. They're not political grants. It's not pork, it's reinvestment. And so those are very important to mostly small towns.
And as we close out, let's just say you were, as we say, working for a bottling company, 5 states, as a vice president. I'm sure you had a nice salary. What made you want to come here and be the executive director of the Illinois Municipal League?
State and local government is kind of like an addiction, I guess, and I'm certainly enthralled by it. I've been involved with it. I believe in public service, and there are a lot of good people that are involved in public service. And you know, you may read a story or hear on the news about a public official that was corrupt or does something wrong or stole money from this fund, and we don't condone that. We don't support it. Nobody does. But there are thousands of local elected officials in Illinois that are doing good work every day. They're going to public hearings. They're promoting their community. They're advancing good causes in their city. They're protecting the public health, safety, and welfare of their residents. There are a lot of good public employees out there, whether it's the public works person, a firefighter, a police officer, a planning or zoning administrator, clerical staff, legal person. There are a lot of good people working in municipal government, and it's a love of mine, and I think this is a great opportunity to be a part of it and help be a bridge between City Hall and the State House. That's really where I see the Municipal League serving a major role, is bridging that gap between those two levels of government. And I'm excited about it. I love this work, and hopefully we'll be able to do some good things here.
All right, Brad Cole, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.